Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana May and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
we talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday. So today we are extremely excited to have author and art business consultant Maria Brophy on the podcast with us. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're super excited to have you with us. We're looking forward to discussing art business systems, newsletters, murals, of course, your book, and then we're also going to be doing a bonus segment on art products and licensing for our podcast supporters at levelupartist.com. But before we dive in, we love to share with our listeners a little bit more about your background for those who may not yet be familiar with your book and the work that you do.
Maria Brophy is author of Amazon best-selling book Art Money Success and is an art licensing and business consultant. Since 2009, she has helped tens of thousands of artists increase their income and learn how to run their art business for fun and profit. She loves help assisting other artists see their potential and helping them reach it. Maria uses her podcast, also named Art Money Success, to share what she has learned when it comes to the business of art. Her philosophy is that anyone can learn to be a good business person. All they need are the right tools and a little bit of help. Her husband, Drew, has been a professional artist his entire life, and together they have learned a lot about the art business the hard way. And it is their goal to share what they have learned so that it's a lot easier for you. And of course, this is a very formal introduction for our listeners, Maria, but we would love to jump into this conversation. There's so many ways that we can take it, but we'd love to start with your book, Art Money Success, because admittedly, this book really was pivotal for both Adriana and I in our growth in art careers. So what inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope readers get out of it?
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear that. And I have to say, I hear that from people all the time. Artists will send me messages telling me that when they read my book, that was when things opened up for them. And that's why I wrote it. And I didn't realize how many people were going to be impacted by it. But many years ago, we're in 2024 right now, and I want to say back in like 2005, 2006, when I started really figuring out the business of art thing, and the artists that I know personally in Southern California would started coming to me for advice. And I love people. I love giving advice about things that I figured out on my own. It's something I've always loved to do. And when I figure something out, no matter what the topic is, I'm going to like sing it from the rooftops and tell everybody. That's just kind of how I am. And so artists started coming to me for advice, and I would spend so much time just telling them everything. There's so much, like, how do you price your paintings, and how do you get a company to print your art on their t-shirts, and how do you deal with difficult clients and all these things. And so then in 2009, I thought, okay, I'm going to start my own blog. And because I can't spend 8 hours a day talking to people for free, I got work to do. So I started writing a blog, and every time somebody came to me with a question, I would write a blog post about it. And I'd say, okay, here it is, read it. So that was 2009. And then by a few years later, I thought, I need to put all this stuff into a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I had written one book before, and it was a very small book called Living the Dream. And it was sharing how Drew and I created this life of traveling the world while selling the art of a surf artist. Neither one of us finished college, and we figured this amazing life out. So that's what my first book was about. So anyway, I started pulling all the information from my blog posts, and because I didn't know how to write a book of this nature. It took me years to write this book. And I
Mhm.
also didn't have the self-discipline to complete. So it literally took me over 7 years to write this book.
Wow.
And the only reason it finally got finished is one day I got so tired of it not being finished that I said, I am just not letting myself leave the house every day until I put 3 to 4 hours in on this book every day. And so I finally got it finished. And in 2017, that's when it went up on Amazon. And it's in a lot of other booksellers as well. And it has um, changed a lot of lives. And the best one that I got, I mean, I get so many good messages from people. There's this artist who lives in Canada, and her family's, I forget what country they're from, but they're from an Asian country. And she sent me this message saying, because of your book, I now earn $10,000 a month and I'm supporting my entire family, including my parents.
Nice.
And they were immigrants and she just figured it out. And the little things that I share in my book helped her get there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I feel like, okay, so Jackie comes from an art degree. I come from a business degree, right? But my complication was after working corporate for more than a dozen years was how do I translate the business side to the art side? Like, where do you marry the two? So I think I got your book either end of 2019 or early 2020, give or take. I probably read it during the pandemic, or started reading it during the pandemic. And it was one of those like aha moments. Now I am that person that hoards art business books, so I will say that. So it's a combination. It takes a village for me in terms of like putting the advice together. But yours was like one of the more, it wasn't woo-woo. It was like clear. Like it wasn't abstract. It wasn't hoity-toity. It was just like straight to the point, which I appreciated. And especially, at least for me, the part about contracts, it did take me a few years to absorb, the advice about the contracts, which we just did an episode on contracts, speaking of. Or no, that one was copyrights, but we have an episode on contracts as well. But it was one of those things where it was like, oh, it's not that other people are trying to necessarily take advantage of you on purpose, but also you as the artist are responsible for reading what you're agreeing to and reading the fine print and things like that. So I remember like reading those bits of it. Also, you had the most comprehensive chapters on licensing, and other books really don't touch upon that very much. So that was super interesting. Anyways, that the YouTube channel, I remember watching the YouTube channel. I still do from time to time. So anyways, it was like a combination of things. Anyways, you were one of the books that Jackie and I discussed during the pandemic. This is pre-podcast. Jackie and I kind of like sharing ideas, exchanging, kind of like information. And yours was one of the ones that we were like, okay, it would be really cool if someday dot dot dot, and here we are today. So anyway, so I just wanted to bring that in because I'm like, yeah, we appreciate that. Definitely can't have too many books on this topic, and yours is pretty clear. So love, love, love that.
Well,
Now getting back to the questions before I fangirl any further. Role does mindset and self-belief play in achieving success as an artist, according to your book?
how much does mindset play into? Okay,
What
so
role? Yes.
what your mindset has a big role in literally everything in your life, from your personal relationships, your love life, how you get along with your neighbors, and it definitely has everything to do with the money you make. It has the amount of money you make doesn't have that much to do with your talent.
Mm.
I know some people really have a hard time, but just take a moment and think about some of that really bad art out there that you see, and you're like, how are they making millions of dollars with this? That's how. It's a mindset. You, if you don't fully believe in yourself, and let's face it, none of us fully believe in ourselves. Okay, it's a human condition. where we all suffer from this condition of feeling unworthy of certain things. But everyone has like a worthiness meter. Okay. So while one artist might, their worthiness hits its level at $500, where another artist, it'll be $5,000, and another one, $500,000. And the people who make you can change that ceiling, that invisible ceiling that you have, just by first being aware of it and understanding that there's a program running in the back of your mind that's running everything.
I think that's
That's
absolutely
pretty
true.
deep, I
And
know.
yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things for me that your book kind of it started that questioning of what my value of my creativity and my skill set in my art was with reading your book, which I actually started with the audiobook and then got the physical copy because I loved it so much. But it was one of those moments where, as Adriana mentioned, I have a background in a studio art degree, got my master's, but there's always that anecdote of, oh, well, you're going to be a starving artist. And even though I was like defiant against that mindset, when you hear it so much, it starts to trickle in. And so after graduating, I was like driving to my hourly wage job, like just scraping by, and I would just listen to your book truly on repeat. And really, when I started implementing some of the things that you mentioned in the book, and the first time I made an art sale to a stranger, like not a friend, not a supportive parent, but someone who genuinely did not know me prior to them discovering me and then saying, I love this work and I want to purchase it, which happened to be more than I would make in 1 month. I made in 1 day in my art business. It totally like shattered my brain of what was possible, like your mindset around money, what your worth is. And I think a lot of the time for artists, to your point, you don't even realize that that is a ceiling because you don't realize that there's more above it. Because it's really just all about taking control of those opportunities as an artist and not just waiting to get discovered, that empowering element that I love that you do so much in your book, which I think kind of brings me to my next question and a big topic that was pivotal for so many artists and something that Adriana and I preach to the rooftops, thanks to you, is how important email newsletters are for an art business. So to give the abridged version, why do you think every artist and art business should keep their own email list?
I tell artists this all the time. They don't listen. Just yesterday, I have a woman that coaches me, and I've coached with her off and on for many years. And I told her that I was trying to decide if I wanted to retire from the art gallery business, because I have an art gallery and it's starting to feel I'm just ready for a giant change.
Mhm.
And she said, well, where does 80% of your income come from? Does it come from people walking into the gallery? And I said, no, you know what? Let me think about it. Because we sell art in multiple ways. I said, 80% of it comes from my newsletters that I sent out. And I say my newsletters are actually Drew's newsletters, where we send it to his collectors and fans. That is where a majority of the sales come. Even though we have a brick and mortar, people come in, they look at the art, it's amazing, hanging on the wall, it's beautiful. That's not where it comes from, though. It's the newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Right.
that's absolutely true. And that you mentioned, like, it helps you turn those one-time interactions into a lifelong relationship, right? So whether you're at an art market, whether you have a gallery, whether you have a public-facing studio like Adriana and I, it's like that's a huge gauge of success is really, hey, how many people can you add to your newsletter? Because even if they didn't purchase today, you're just building up that list for future income that's going to be coming down the road.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And it's a lot. If you're in this for the long term,
Right.
most people listening aren't just, they're not going to just be an artist for a year or two. they're in it for the long term. The newsletter list is the only thing you can really own. When you think about how you reach people out there, you don't own Instagram or Facebook. They can kick you off at any time or hide you from the algorithm. The newsletters, it's your, you can get personal, you can have a direct relationship by sending these out and sharing who you are with the people on your list and not letting them forget about you, because somebody might fall in love with your art today and then life, they get busy, things happen, they forget about you, and then they're redoing their living room and they forget you exist unless they're getting your newsletters, and now they're redoing their living room and they think, gosh, I would love to get that artist's art now that I have a place to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. Yeah, no, and it's passive. It's one of those things too where it's like another thing we share with artists is you're not bothering people. They choose to follow you because they like what you're sharing. Like instead of just bills and sales at Kohl's, they also get art. And I'm pretty sure they're going to look forward to that more than, the other stuff. So it's like you're not really bothering them. If they don't want to read it, they just delete it or unsubscribe. It's not that personal, but at least you have that little bit of color in their inbox, so to speak, that they can choose to look at. So I love that. Now, in terms of lead magnets, so speaking of, right, and how they tie into newsletters, what roles would you say lead magnets have in attracting newsletter subscribers, especially for you guys? Do you have any examples of effective ones that artists can kind of start thinking about if they don't have one yet, other
A
than
lead
the regular pop-up, of course?
Yeah, well, you have to give them a reason to want to sign up, right? So if now people who know you and love your art, they want to sign up, but you also want to capture people who you're new to and they just land on your website or however they get there. So a lead magnet, and it depends on what kind of art you are. So here, one lead magnet we've done, is offering people because Drew does these surreal kind of almost cartoony illustrations. A lot of young people like it. So we came up with these color your own paint, color your own surfboard templates. And it's just something they can print out. They can print out on a piece of paper. And really it's more for kids. We've done, so that's one thing, but the you have to give people a reason to sign up for your newsletter. And for every artist, that's different. So for Drew, he's always got like these little special drops that are like limited edition drops. And he has a lot of like 40, I don't know, 45, 60,000 followers on Instagram. I forget the number. He's got a lot of followers, but they aren't all on the newsletter list. And so we'll occasionally say, hey, if you want to be the first to know about this next drop, and by the way, our drops run out because we only do like 25 of this particular thing that he's going to sign, then sign up and you'll know when it drops. And so that's another way to get people to give
Nice.
them the inner circle, make them feel like they're involved, they're in on something that other people are not in on.
Yeah, a little more exclusive, some
Yes.
kind of, yeah, first dibs. Everybody likes
Yeah.
first dibs, especially if you're a big fan of the artist, then that's definitely a good reason to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also comes back to that common theme as we're kind of touching on is it not only builds that business credibility as an art business, right? Because I think a lot of people think of, oh, that's cute. You just sell stuff on Instagram. When you're like, it's a little bit feels more legitimate if there's an email associated with it, if you have the website. And it's also investing into that long-term relationship building, right? Thinking long-term, thinking for when people upgrade their homes and suddenly have all this wall space because they're not in a small apartment anymore, or they have a big promotion at work and they want to treat themselves to something, and all of a sudden they now remember this artist they saw in a festival a year and a half ago. And that kind of makes me think about, do you have any like specific stories on how maybe a passive newsletter subscriber ended up turning into a super profitable opportunity down the road?
Let me think. There was, so yeah, actually last year, we decided to pull some stuff out of storage. Drew has designed a lot of action sports products over the years where he'll like create a giant painting and then, we'll sell the painting and the artwork will be printed on different things like surfboards, skateboards, wakeboards. So we had a bunch of wakeboards in storage and we decided to let them go. We've had them since the late 90s. And they were in perfect condition, still in the wrapper and everything. So I sent a newsletter out and I got a message from a guy who owns a museum in Singapore.
What?
And he said, I have a wakeboard museum and I want to buy all of them. And it was like $15,000. And I said, okay. And here we
Sold.
thought we were just going to be selling one here, one here, one here. And this guy bought them all. And I don't even know who this guy is. We've never met him before. I don't know how he ended up on the newsletter list. I mean, we've had this newsletter list for a really long time. And so that was a surprise. He's never bought anything from us before.
That's so
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that
I-
too, 'cause yeah, that's the perfect example of how there may be people you meet in person or that who tell you that they follow your newsletter, but there's also so many fans of yours that you've never met in person, haven't talked to. And so you really, when you send those emails out, you're building a relationship with people that you're not even aware of, which is so cool.
Well, and one thing that we do that I highly recommend because it's very effective to use it as a tool to build a relationship is Drew will tell a little story in the newsletter. Usually it's either a story about the painting or something that he just did or something, right? An adventure. And then he'll ask a question and he'll say, hit reply to this email, even though I have 10,000 people on my newsletter list. I mean, it doesn't say that, but hit reply to this. I read every email. I'd love to hear your thought on this. Or he'll ask a direct question. And not everybody responds, but the people that do, they're the most engaged ones. And their response always gives you insight into what people are thinking when they're reading your newsletter. And it just helps you to do it even better. And it develops this relationship now because
Yeah.
then
Plus,
you'll
those
always
highly
respond
engaged.
back.
Yeah, and those highly engaged are the ones you want to hear from anyways. Not the casual reads one, one every, I don't know, every 6 months. It's more like the one that actually is looking all the time. I love that. I love that idea. Now shifting a little bit into the world of murals, which is one of the topics that you guys talk about, of course, for artists who are maybe at the start of their mural journey, looking to grow murals as an income stream. Do you have any advice or strategies that you would give them for gaining momentum and opportunities?
I would say you definitely want to get some murals under your belt, you really need experience. There are so many challenges with painting murals if you don't know what you're doing. The ideal scenario is find another muralist that you can volunteer to help them with a mural so you can learn from them or just be hired to work with them and get familiar with what it takes. You can make a lot of money painting murals. I have a lot of artists that I work with that do really, really well. And when I say make good money, some of them are charging $50 a square foot and they're doing, 30 foot by 15-foot murals. That's pretty good money. Pretty
Hmm.
good money.
Yeah, I love that advice. Yeah, currently one of the murals I'm working on, the artist that's with me, she's mural curious, and she's like, I don't know if I could even wrap my head around this. And I'm like, well, I'm recovering from an injury, so I was like, do you want to come out? And of course she's getting paid. It's not pizza and beer, it's money. But I was like, wait, this is a win-win that I wish when I was thinking about it, I had thought to reach out. But I think that's definitely solid advice to just see if you can go out with somebody else and help them out. And I would add to that, this I heard from a couple other muralists, and I think you'll agree with this, that if you do choose to go out with another muralist that's already working, actually go to work. Like, or just bringing them a sandwich, and a drink. Find out what they eat first, of course. But like, help them get a food break and like chill with them a little bit and either help or come back some other time because I found that out that it's like I'm about to get up on that high ladder. I can't really chit chat right now. I'm kind of concentrated on
Oh,
not
yeah.
falling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's work. So if you are not the kind of person that is willing to really work your tail off, whether you're being paid or you're helping someone, don't do it.
yeah,
Because it's a
it's a lot
lot
of
of work.
work.
I know a lot of muralists that once they get they're older, like in their 50s, they have to stop because
Mhm.
it's so physical, especially when you're talking large scale. Or really, it doesn't even matter. It's very physical work. So
Hmm.
Drew's really moved away from doing murals because of that. He'll only do them if it pays, if it's a highly paid project. So any mural you see him do, he's getting paid really, really well for it now. Where when
Nice.
he was younger, it's kind of fun novelty to see your art on a giant wall.
Oh, yes.
But when you get older, your body just doesn't do it as well anymore.
Takes a little longer to recover.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think those are all great things to think about, whether depending on where in your creative journey you are, but also thinking about like site selection too. I know the handful of murals, my first couple were volunteering with other artists and then slowly getting a few opportunities under my belt as paid commission pieces. But even with every mural, you learn something so different. If it's indoor versus outdoor, if it's on a sealed surface, or if you have to seal it, if it's next to a highway or if it's right on like a walking path where pedestrians have lots of questions. These are all very different experiences as a muralist. So I'm curious if you could discuss a little bit about that importance of selecting a good mural site or like how it could impact the success of a potential mural project.
Well, most of we've never actually gone out and sought mural projects. I know a lot of artists that do that where they're looking for a place. Um, but what I would say is if you're hired, I mean, I'm kind of changing your question just a little bit because this is something important, I think, for artists to know. If you're hired to do a mural, and let's say it's for a corporate location, and it's a place of business where people are going there 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you do not want to take your sweet time. I'm like, you really, um, besides the artwork itself being of the best possible quality, you also want to make your experience that you're creating for your client to be seamless, easy, and zero stress on their part. And that means you're not taking your time taking 2-hour lunch breaks and dragging a 3-day mural project out over 6 days. You're taking a 3-day mural project and trying to do it in 2 days. And how do you do that? You hire somebody to help you. That way you're not negatively impacting your client and their employees that have to come to work. And if you have a problem, I always say if you have a problem, your client does not need to know about it unless they need to know about it. And I'll give you an example. Drew was doing a mural project for a yogurt shop. And so they didn't have their grand opening yet. And it was a difficult project because it was huge and the wall was curved in 3 different places. So it was
Oh,
very challenging and it was super high up. So he's on scaffolding. And we hired a very good muralist to help him so it would be seamless and perfect. And so everything was great until the
uh-oh.
very end when he went to seal it. I don't remember what he was using. This was a long time ago. And I was actually in Chicago with a bunch of girlfriends on this particular day having fun. I was there with a bachelorette party and he
Uh-oh.
called me freaking out. He said, "Oh my God, you won't believe this. I put the sealant on it and the paint is peeling up. It's a disaster. I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Oh my God, no," because their grand opening was like in 2 days. And
Uh-oh.
I said, "Okay, do not tell the client. Let's figure it out." Figure it out. And he did. He figured it out. He went and tried
A
another
different brand.
sealant and did all these things. It was an absolute nightmare though. In the end, he fixed it. He had to repaint some sections of it. Um,
Oops.
but the client had no idea.
Yeah.
They
And they
had
don't
no
care.
idea that this happened. And all they knew was it was easy to work with Drew Brophy, and they were happy.
Nice.
That's all they knew.
Yeah, they definitely don't care. And I definitely echo that sentiment of like kind of like under promise and over deliver in terms of how long it's gonna take. And then also, artists do take into account when you are quoting a project that you kind of quote in there if you're going to have somebody help you. So one that you were talking about that brought to mind was last summer. Jackie was one of the people helping me. It ended up being four of us, okay? Four of us working in different shifts and trying to make it happen because it was a place of business and where the lift had to go, it would cover employee and customer parking. And it was in a shared parking lot with other businesses, so it was already getting crowded in there. Anyway, so it was one of those like, how soon can y'all put it up? And it's like 14 to like 16 feet in some areas, over 100 feet wide. We have to do it in how
Yeah.
many days? Anyways, luckily there was a holiday in between and that kind of worked out. But yeah, definitely, if you're all listening to this, it's like, yeah, you definitely got to make plans and the client doesn't care. They don't care. You got to give them a deadline you can both work with, but that you think you can do faster than what you said because there will be rain, there will be 100-degree days, which we experienced. There will be 100-degree days. There will be I bumped my head on the lift days. That was me. And I need to go home. I need ice cream and feel better. Um, anyway, so taking those into account. So great, great advice. Now, do you have any advice on or strategies that you would give, especially emerging artists that are like, how do I turn this one mural into other opportunities? Like, how do I leverage this and make it into other stuff?
Absolutely. Always put your name on it. Put your name on it. I see a lot of artists putting their name and their Instagram handle.
Yes.
Um, Make sure your name is legible so people can find you. Because I see that happen all the time. I'll see a mural and I love it. And I always want to know who the artist is because I want to look them up. I want to know who they are. I refer artists out a lot for projects that we don't want to do or don't have time to do. And so I keep a list of artists where I like their art and I can tell that they'd be perfect for future projects. And anyway, if their name's not on there, I get really upset because there's no way to know. So make sure your name's on there. Um, you could, if it's worthy of news attention. I have done this where I've contacted local news and said, hey, this mural's being painted on this wall. You might want to come down and take pictures and maybe interview the artist.
Nice.
Because local news, they're always looking for something. They're always looking for, you know,
Positive stuff.
they're always looking for something because they need content. They can't just come up with it, and you're solving a problem for them by letting them know. And
Yeah, I
then
like
the
that
business
idea.
that hired you, they're making out. They're making out from it because now they're getting a little press attention.
Yeah,
The win-win-win.
Yes.
it is a win-win-win. Yeah, you just made me think too. I just saw another artist the other day who got their mural printed on t-shirts. So they took had a really high quality photo. A professional photographer came in, they cleaned it up a little bit digitally, and now he's selling t-shirts and stickers of a mural. I was like, wait, what? But I love that idea of inviting the media over. Oh, absolutely. Well, anyways, we can keep going with that, and we have more we want to ask you, but we're going to take a quick break. We love to ask our guests about how they define success, but we're going to take a quick break and put in a word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artist courses.
We understand that life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of information out there. So, what do visual artists actually need?
We've spent countless hours of trial and error, weeding through tons of information to find the gold, so you don't have to waste your time going down those endless rabbit holes.
In addition to weekly calls, we have created video course modules to cover everything from artist documents to exhibition prep, social media to technology, sales strategies, artist mindset, PDF resources, templates, and so much more.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartists.com to learn more, get immediate access, and level up your career today.
Welcome back, everybody. So we'll dive straight in. Maria, how do you define success? In this case, as an art professional. In many ways, you're supporting Drew. He's creating the art. You're doing the consulting. You're assisting, other artists as well for them to succeed. But how would you define success?
To me, success is creating a life that you want to live. And I know that sounds cliche, but it really is. As a kid, I wasn't a happy kid because things were rough as a child, but I always dreamed of happiness. And to me, I actually dreamed about writing books. I dreamed about being the manager of a rock and roll band, and which never happened, but I probably would have been good at that. And I dreamed of living at the beach in a life of travel. And just knowing what I wanted was like a beacon for me, although it took me a long time to figure out how to get all that because I didn't know anyone that was living the lifestyle that I wanted to live because I grew up in a tiny hick podunk town in the middle of nowhere and I just didn't have mentors, but I knew what I wanted. So for everyone listening, what you want, like if you think about what kind of life you want to live and what that is what your life looks like every day. What is it that you want to be doing? Who do you want to spend your time with? What do you want to spend your time doing? What would bring you the greatest joy? And for every single person, that's different. And so, like for me, I love traveling. I have a sister that hates to travel, and she loves her home. And so all her time is spent gardening and creating this utopia in her home.
Mm-hmm.
And she's figured that out. But really, it's just figuring out what's going to bring you the most joy. And if being an artist is going to bring you joy, figuring out how to do it in a way that keeps you you want to be mindful to not get pulled down a path that feels bad.
Mhm.
I mean, basically, your feelings are like a barometer of whether you're getting closer to what you want or farther away from what you want. Which sounds like a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't know that, and they just keep doing these things that they don't want to be doing that makes them unhappy every day, not realizing that the years are flying by, and one day they go, "Oh my gosh, half my life's gone, and I still am not doing what makes me happy." So really, that's what success is.
I love that. I love that. That really reminds me of a piece of advice I heard early on from a professor of mine, where it was kind of in general about life, but I think especially in an art career, that she said, if you're going to decide to climb the ladder, make sure it's leaned up against the right wall. Because otherwise, you're just going to be climbing up. You're going to sit at the top of the wall and realize, I actually didn't want to be here. I wanted to be over on that wall. And then you have to climb back down and start again. And it's really definitely one of those things where, as an artist, I mean, whether you think from a business side of, oh, I can only make money at art markets. But if you don't like the experience of art markets, if you dread going, if you get overheated quickly, you're doing all these outdoor markets, then you build a business that's dependent on that. Well, like what kind of life is that day to day? Or with any income stream, really. So I absolutely love that advice. And I guess it makes me curious, what is one piece of advice you wish you had heard before you got started on your creative journey?
Definitely, I worked way too hard. And I mean, I have a great work ethic, and a good work ethic's very important, don't get me wrong. But I took it too far. And I don't, if I mean, that's my biggest regret, when I look back, because I've been doing this for, 25 years now. And my son was a baby when I started this work. He's 22 now. And that's my biggest regret, was that I approached business from thinking that the harder I worked and the more hours I worked and the more I pushed and pushed and pushed, that it was going to create this highly successful business. Now, granted, it did to a degree, but was I traded some of my health for that. I traded some of my time with my son for that when he was a baby. And what I wish I knew then that I know now is, yes, work ethic's important, but what's even more important than that is taking the time every day to think about what you want. And this actually falls on the heels of what you just said. Think about what you want and make that your single focus, so that the things that you don't want to do kind of fall away. And I did that to some degree, but I definitely worked a lot harder than I needed to, because I was doing things that I didn't want to do. And I
Oh,
don't anymore. I mean, I'm so much wiser now after all these.
so we all want to climb, right? I'm kidding. We do. We learn. Hopefully we learn. But the advice you just gave and what Jackie said actually reminds me of this. Honestly, it was a random encounter that I had with this older Irish man in the Cayman Islands of all places. Anyways, it's very random. This is before I left corporate. And what you just said kind of like rung, I don't know, it was like he memory unlocked kind of situation, where he basically said when you work for somebody else you're trading life units for money. And he's like, so since everybody has a limited amount of time units or time blocks, whatever you want to call it, make sure that whoever you are trading with is paying you what you're worth, because employers will always pay you the least amount possible that they can for your life units. So make sure it's a worthy trade. It's okay to work for other people, but make sure it's a worthy trade because it's limited. So you just kind of like, it was one of the many things that I heard that I was like, why am I building this career in investment finance, right? Like I should be doing something else. I also hit that point of like, what am I doing? And I also came from that work ethic of if you work really, really hard, things will like figure themselves out. And the answer is like yes and no. You just have to make sure that you know where your compass is pointing towards and that you're following it. Because if you're just wandering about and drifting, then you're just another 9 to 5 corporate zombie, just doing everything to pay their bills and make their house pretty and things like that. But then your life is just, it's a husk. Sounds very sobering, but none of us. Let's not drift and turn into soulless husks. Again, I did enjoy my corporate life. I just have to add that in there. But make sure it's something that you enjoy. So thank you for that. That was a great reminder. Now, Maria, if somebody randomly handed you $100 right now, I know you're in California. I will throw that out there. California and New Yorkers, we always tell you guys you could get a little extra for this exercise, but random $100, what would you splurge on or invest in? It has to be something that brings you joy and relates to your art or business.
And relates to my business. Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I'd probably buy another microphone. I know that's really boring, but that's like what I spend my money on is microphones and cords and uh earbuds and headphones and
Yeah, you'll be using them every day, so you might as well treat
tripods.
yourself.
I have this thing about tripods and
Oh
light
man.
rings.
Yep.
I don't know.
Maybe a comfy chair?
What's that?
A comfortable chair?
A comfortable chair. Yeah, you can't get that for $100 in California.
That's
You
true.
can't even, I mean, you can't get a dinner for two, a good dinner for two for $100
That's
here.
true. It's just desserts for you and Drew.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Maria. It has been such a joy. Real quick before we wrap up, what exciting projects do you have that our listeners should know about?
Well, we talked about murals. I created these mural templates that help you price and propose your mural. And I also have templates and courses for art licensing. So if anybody wants to check them out, they can go to brophyartacademy.com and you'll find them there.
Amazing. I'm sure that helps so many artists. And as you were saying earlier, just sharing forward all the advice and business lessons you guys have learned. Thank you so much for all that you do for the artists out there. It really makes such a big impact.
Well, thank you. And I love that you two are trying to share all your wisdom because it's it's a challenging business because there's no one roadmap. And so people sharing is the way to make it easier for everybody. And I love that. I think we all should be more generous in sharing with our knowledge.
Absolutely agree. So for our listeners, how can they stay connected with you in addition to your website and getting your templates, but where can they stay connected with you after they listen to this episode?
Well, you could find me on Instagram, and that's just my name, Maria Brophy. I spend a lot of time on Instagram. And also, if you want to get on my newsletter list, not Drew's, but mine, I give my lead magnet is a free 11-week e-coaching, and you can sign up through my pop-up if you go to mariabrophy.com.
Nice.
And it's
awesome
with good stuff.
Awesome. We'll definitely link all of those in the show notes, the website, the academy, all the things. And would you mind staying with us a few extra minutes so we can talk about our products and licensing as a bonus segment for our podcast supporters?
Absolutely.
Perfect. In the meantime, for our listeners, if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on the podcast, you can reach us through social media. I'm at Amate Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artist on Instagram. You can also visit levelupartist.com to hear the rest of this conversation and become one of our podcast supporters.
This will also give you access to amazing off-the-record conversations with our guests, artist community platform, and it helps to keep the podcast going.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.